welcome to the beginning of another reading vlog. I have got my second cup of coffee of the day here. I spent my morning just tidying up around this flat, cleaning, getting my affairs in order, lots of laundry, etc, etc. All the boring things are out of the way in readiness to do lots of fun things with you this weekend. So firstly, let me show you the book that I'm going to be reading throughout all of this. So the book I have chosen is The Sisters of the Winterwood by Rena Rossner. I honestly just saw this in the library and was completely enthralled by the cover. I think it's absolutely beautiful, and it seems to be a folktale inspired novel that follows two sisters that live on the borders of Moldova and Ukraine. It seems to kind of follow the trope of magic being rediscovered by a new generation, by these two sisters called Liba and Leia, and it seems to be kind of a book about them coming into their magical inheritance and doing what they can to save their community. So I am really excited to get going with this. Of course, I have picked out a suitably autumnal bookmark to go with it, and now that I have finished all the boring things, I can get on and read this very exciting sounding book. I think I'm meeting a friend in a little while, and I'm definitely meeting some people this evening, so that gives me a decent amount of time to get started with this. I'm going to enjoy my coffee, I'm probably going to make myself some lunch, and I will check in with you in a little while. I am just home from a lovely afternoon and evening with some of my friends. I tried not to get too much footage just to respect their privacy, but we had a really lovely time, and I have been sent home with some extra cake. This is a New York crumb cake that my boyfriend George made, and it is absolutely delicious. So I'm gonna eat this, and I have made myself a lovely large mug of peppermint tea to enjoy while I curl up and read for the rest of the evening. I haven't read too much yet, but the stuff I've read so far I'm really liking. The sisters both have very different narrative voices, which I think is really interesting. One of them is much more traditional prose, and the other is kind of like poetic sensibility to the writing, and I'm intrigued to see how that is going to factor into their kind of character arcs and the storyline itself. In terms of what I know about the narrative so far, the folkloric aspect seems to be drawing from Jewish mythology, which should be really interesting. I don't know a ton about that, so I'm really looking forward to reading a bit more this evening, and I'm sure I will check in with you when I have some more thoughts about it. Hello everyone and good afternoon. I spent my morning running some errands that desperately needed doing, including a nice big food shop, and I also spent an hour or so with my housemate, which was absolutely lovely, just catching up on house stuff and friend stuff over some tea, and it was a lovely way to start the day. But I have a reading update for you. So with my combined reading last night and this morning, I have made it past the halfway point, and so far so good. My only sticking point that I have run into is that I was under the impression that this was an adult fantasy fiction, but there seems to be quite a prominent feeling of a young adult narrative voice and thread, which partially is because both of the characters are 18 years old or younger, but it does mean that some aspects of the plot are addressed in a way that I think is much more suitable for a slightly younger audience, but that doesn't detract from the narrative itself. It's just something that was a little bit unexpected. The magical inheritance of the sisters that I previously spoke about has kind of come to light and is really ramping up a little bit. It turns out that each of them have the capacity, when they kind of come of age, to transform into different animals, one of them being a bear and one of them being a swan. And there is also this more historical and kind of less fun thread really running through the book from the community that they are raised in. They're raised in a community that has both Jewish and non-Jewish families living together side by side. We're getting to a part in the book where we are starting to see a shift in that dynamic, and I will say that there is some anti-Semitic language in this which some people may feel uncomfortable reading, and the author herself is of Jewish heritage, so everything else is done in a really beautiful way. I'm really enjoying it so far, especially the relationship between the two sisters and how the two are so different and then also linked as well. The other thing that I haven't quite wrapped my head around before is one of the sisters, her point of view is written kind of in a traditional prose style, and the other one, Leia's, is written in verse, and I still can't quite figure out the reason behind that. Perhaps that will come to light a bit later in the book, or perhaps it is supposed to be more poetic and graceful, or for a certain type of animal. I'm not really sure, but I'm gonna have some more of my tea today. I'm drinking lemon and ginger and it is delicious, and I'm going to read a little bit more this afternoon. Hello, it is the evening now. I spent the day at work and did some more reading on my lunch break, and I also met up with a friend after work. We went for pizza and a drink, and it was really, really nice to catch up. I didn't film any of that, one, because I forgot and we'd already eaten the pizza by then, and two, honestly, it's nice just to have things as private and personal relationships without having to put a camera on them. So I'm back now anyway, and I read quite a lot of this book since I last checked in with you. I'm still enjoying the general story, but I have to admit that it is getting a little bit repetitive at this point. The plot doesn't really seem to be picking up that much, and a lot of the time that we spend with the sisters is them either like just crying about the same situation that they've been in for like the whole book, and kind of being overwhelmed by feelings that they might have for a boy, and it's just kind of starting to feel a little bit tedious. So I'm hoping that these last like 100 pages or so are gonna pick up and be a bit more action-packed and a bit more, well, just like a bit less passive really. It's just not quite scratching the itch that I was hoping it would, but I am committed to finishing this. It's not even 8 p.m. yet, so I reckon I might be able to finish this before I go to sleep, which is quite exciting.
and I will be able to feedback my final thoughts with you tomorrow. Also, I am aware that 1, this is not a great angle, and 2, that the lighting is not very good, but we are now, you know, nearing the winter months, and trying to get any form of decent lighting is a bit of a nightmare, so I apologise, and I hope that you will be patient with me for this and maybe grant me a little bit of grace at this time.
Good morning, my lovely friends. As I anticipated, I did finish The Sisters of the Winterwood by Rena Rossner last night, and I do have my final thoughts to share with you on the book today. Although the plot did come to a relatively sound conclusion, I actually really enjoyed the kind of tentative note of safety that this book was left on. It felt very in tune with the community that it was based in and in the time period, and it felt right to have this book not finish on a complete resolution. There were, however, some other resolutions which I was pleased to see, which kind of included both of the sisters embracing their identities and their transformed selves. So Liebe really coming into her own in her bear transformations, and Leia with her swan family, and that kind of coming into completion for them. I also enjoyed that Liebe managed to kind of get the guy, managed to get David by the end of the book, or at least seemingly so. However, there are elements of the book that fell flat, and I think it was purely because it was just a little bit too ambitious. The author really tried to pack in about 5 different types of folklore, and from a little bit more research, it's also kind of a retelling of Christina Rossetti's poem Goblin Market as well. So there was a lot kind of going on here, and I'm not sure that all of those components came together in the end. I think a lot of these elements ended up competing for attention instead of working seamlessly together. There were quite a few bits that just weren't dwelled on enough for me. One of them being the parents, their mummy and tati left almost immediately with a very rushed explanation of their heritage, and it was quite boom, 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 you're a bear, you're a swan, look after each other, see you later, when really that should have maybe been given a bit more airtime. And there was also a group of brothers in the book called the Hovlins, who I won't go into too much detail about in case you do want to read the book, but they come out of nowhere and they are selling delicious fruit, and the fruit seems to have some sort of enchantment on it, and only lures girls to them, who then seem to get manipulated. One of them is one of the sisters, and there is something very malicious and kind of really awful in their behaviour towards the girls, and also spreading slander and anti-Semitism among the community, and just kind of acting with a lot of hatred. We don't know where they come from, we don't know what their driving force is, we don't know what they're trying to achieve long term. There's so little background to them, and then in comparison there is so much time dwelt on these 2 girls wondering if the guy likes them back, and it's established really early on for one of them at least that he really does like them back, and there's a lot of angst. It gets kind of tiresome, to be perfectly honest, which was a shame because the rest of the book I feel like had so much potential. I would give it a solid 3 stars because I kept reading it. I kept wanting to read it. I kept wanting to find out answers to different questions, but those questions just weren't being answered in enough depth and detail, and that was a little bit of a shame. Overall, 3-star read, and if you're looking for a YA book, you might actually really like this. I don't think it was marketed in the best way because it has been put out as an adult fantasy book, and I just really don't think it actually fits that category very well. But thought-provoking at times, enjoyable, and I would recommend it to people who are looking for a young adult fantasy read that is based in historical events. And then on a slightly separate but on a serious note, I just felt it wasn't right to end this video, which is based around, you know, a book that is set on the outskirts of Ukraine at a time where Jewish people were subjected to just truly abominable treatment, without mentioning the continuing escalation of the Israel-Palestine conflict, as well as the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia. It's just absolutely heartbreaking to see so much devastation and to see people from these beautiful countries with so much rich culture just suffer at the hand of regimes that are power hungry and disregard human life. And I think I also just want to specifically mention that it's really important to distinguish between government and people, and that if you know people who follow different belief systems or belief systems that you think may be being attacked at this moment, to just check in with them with kindness and support if you feel able to. And I just want to say that if you yourself are directly or indirectly affected by the events that are unfolding, that I just want you to know that I am thinking about you and I am sending you so much love, even though that just doesn't feel enough, to be honest. I was hesitant whether I wanted to even bring it up, but I just felt that it wouldn't be right to do this whole kind of light-hearted vlogging video when the book that I'm reading is also light-hearted but has this, you know, a thread of war spreading, anti-Semitism and the impact that it has on families and communities. And there's so much sadness at the moment. The world is feeling quite heavy and sad these days. But that also doesn't mean that you can't find moments of joy and little pockets of peacefulness to get you through. Books are such a wonderful way to escape from reality for a little while. But I also think that escapism is important. You know, it's good to widen your imagination and your understanding of people and cultures. And that's how, you know, we can grow and learn and maybe even utilize that for change and for good in the future. Anyway, I think it's time I head off. So all that to say, I hope you enjoyed the video and that perhaps it provided some form of respite for you today. Take care and I will see you soon.